Good morning. I hope you guys had a great weekend and stayed safe for Halloween and still had fun as well. Uh, I am going to do my best to read a chapter each day and post an assignment. Um, so for a little while, we'll just stick with our novels, which I hope you all brought your BFG book home. I'm just going to start out. I want you can either follow along or you can just listen as I'm reading it. I do want you to take note of important events that occur during this chapter, because after I'm finished, I'll have you open up a document that you will need to summarize the main events from this chapter. So this is the 13th chapter, called A Trouble Humper for the Flesh Lump Eater. All right. They's always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said. He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look. Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that human beings who is 50 is spending about 20 years sleeping fast? I must admit, that never occurred to me, Sophie said. Well, you should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he's 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking. It's a funny thought, Sophie said. Exactly, the BFG said. So what I was trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he's 50 is not 50, he's only 30. Well, what about me? I'm 8. You's not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little chidlers are spending half their time sleeping, so you's only 4. I'm 8, Sophie said. You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you's only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You's only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titch little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who's hundreds of years more than you. How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked. They's never wasting much time snozzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough. Wait, when do you sleep? Sophie asked. Even less, the BFG answered. I sleepin' only once in a blue baboon. Sophie, peeping out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now that they were awake. Now than when they were awake. Sprawled out across the yellow plain, they covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open. They were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air. By gum frog, he cried. I is just having the most whoopsie-whiffling idea. Give me a second. I need to plug in my computer because my battery is running low. Just a minute. Okay, sorry about that. What? Sophie said. Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait and see what I's gonna bring about. He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of the pocket. He rolled back the stone and he entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly. You stay where you's in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We's doing this lovely bit of buck squashing both together. He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung onto the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one he had been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered. Keep your head up, good, the BFG said. Then you'll get a fine winkle of what's going on. When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes toward the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the flesh lump eater. He pointed at him, then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ah, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the flesh lump eater's face. The snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again, a big bubble of spit formed between his two open lips, and then it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips and he aimed the instrument directly at the flesh lump eater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting toward the giant's face. For a split second, it hovered above the face. Then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it had all happened so quickly that Sophie couldn't be sure. I'm going to show you, if you can see. You're not following along. Here he is, blowing this dream or this nightmare into the giant. We had better be skittling away quick to where it's safe, the BFG whispered. He trotted off for about 100 yards, then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth. Now, he said, we's waiting for the gun and flames to begin. Now, they didn't have long to wait. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the flesh lump eater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch. Ah! Roared the flesh lump eater. Ow! He's still asleep, the BFG whispered. The terrible troggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him. Serves him right, Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps. Save us! Screamed the flesh lump eater, thrashing about madly. He's after me! He's getting me! The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch such a massive creature having such mighty convulsions. It's Jack, bellowed the flesh lump eater. It's the grunchiest Jack. Jack's after me. Jack is wreck-crackling me. He's spike-stickling me. Jack is splash-plunkling me. It's the terrible, fright-swiping Jack. The flesh lump eater was writhing about over the ground like some colossal tortured snake. Oh, spare me, Jack, he yelled. Don't hurt me, Jack. That's just showing how he's just in pain. He's scared. Who is this Jack he's talking about? Sophie whispered. Jack, is the only human being all giants is frightened of, the BFG told her. They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They's all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer. If you are putting two and two together, you probably know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, and that's where that's coming from. Save me! Cried the Flesh Lump Eater. Have mercy on this poor little giant, the Beanstalk. He's coming at me with his terrible spike-sticklin' beanstalk. Take it away. I's begging you, Jack. I's praying you not to touch me with your terrible spike-sticklin' beanstalk. Us giants, the BFG whispered, is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We's knowing only that he's a famous giant killer, and that he's owning something called a beanstalk. We's knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing, and Jack's using it to kill giants. Sophie couldn't stop smiling. What you griggling at? The BFG asked her, slightly nettled. I'll tell you later, Sophie said. And here he is whispering, telling Sophie all about it as the giant is having his awful dream. The awful nightmare had now gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body into knots. Do not do it, Jack, he screeched. I was not eating you, Jack. I's never eaten human beings. I swear I's never gobbled a single human being in my wholesome life. Liar, said the BFG. Just then one of the Flesh Lump Eater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep, meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring, gizzard-gobbling giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leapt to their feet. So, while he is having this nightmare, he's like flailing around and he's waking up the other giants. He's swiping me right in the mouth, yelled the meat dripper. He's bung-swoggling me smack in the guts, shouted the gizzard gobbler. The two of them rushed at the Flesh Lump Eater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched Flesh Lump Eater woke up with a bang. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping, rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another either got stepped on or kicked. Soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, teeth fell out like hailstones. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled, a big, wide smile of absolute pleasure. I's loving it when they's all having a good toughin' rumble, he said. They'll kill each other, Sophie said. I never, the BFG answered. Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it'll be getting dusky and they'll be galloping off to fill their tummies. They're coarse and foul and filthy, Sophie said. I hate them. As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly, we certainly was putting that nightmare to good use, though, wasn't we? Excellent use, Sophie said. Well done, you. And that ends 13.